What's up, all?
Not much, man. How you been?
Better now that I don't have to just say hi to you. I have now somebody else I can talk to.
Look, man, we're crushing it with the interviews. It means I get to be quiet for an hour.
Yeah, Justin, when you're not here or somebody else isn't here, we have to mention AI or psychedelics.
It's pretty much the rule.
Inside of 5 minutes, it just ends up going there. So, welcome.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. How are you? Where you're at? You're in New York City, right?
I'm in New York. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's rainy up there today, actually, right?
It's rainy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little gloomy down here in Baltimore. So cool. Thanks for coming. Welcome to the show. Let's just get into it. Tell us a little something about yourself before we'll get into the book and all that other neat stuff later. But you just walk us into Justin Glaser.
Sure.
Glaser? How do I say that?
Glaser. Yeah.
Glaser. Yeah. Okay.
Glaser. Yeah. I'm the author of this book. Kind of leading up to that, I grew up in New Jersey, New York, went to school for English and entrepreneurship. That's kind of where this journey.
Are those two different things, or was that like the world's weirdest major?
It's two separate
things.
Yeah.
Okay. It was a double major then?
It was an English major and then the entrepreneurship minor, but I ended up spending more time on that.
All right.
Minor. Yeah.
Where'd you do undergrad? That's a cool combination.
Michigan.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's neat. Actually, my senior thesis in graphic design was a website, and this was 1999. And my partner on that was an entrepreneurial studies major.
Okay.
And so he did his senior thesis on the same thing. So we kind of wove it together. But that was the first time I'd ever seen that program. And it's actually, I think, should be mandatory for every college kid taking any class or any subject.
Yeah. They had a good program. It's kind of where I got my first taste of kind of doing my own work outside of an employer. And I kind of caught the bug for that. And outside of that, just really passionate about mostly health and psychology, kind of like my two big areas of study. Obviously, for this book, I focused kind of narrow, and I'll get into kind of the backstory on that. What else can I tell you about myself? Love music and been a songwriter since I'm 12 years old.
A songwriter, huh?
That's about it. Yeah.
What instrument are you in? I'm just curious.
Got my guitar here, and piano is what I started on.
Oh, touching my knees at the moment is my piano that sits underneath my desk, and then behind me, you can't see, is my banjo.
I see Billy Joel. Yeah, on the
all his concert posters.
Yeah, I'm deep into the concert poster land.
Cool.
No, piano's great. I wish I had more time for it, but I've got teenage kids, and I don't know how anybody with teenage kids gets anything but having teenage kids done.
I'm not there yet. So
yeah. Do you have kids?
No kids. No, I'm not married.
No kids. Yet. Okay. Yeah. Having a kid was like the easiest thing in the world up till about 8. And then all of a sudden it was like,
fuck you, man.
Man, Jesus Christ.
It's been hell all the way.
There's
through.
So much going on.
So much. Oh God.
Yeah. And now I think one of the jokes about being into health is I do it just so I'm not dead.
Yeah. I do it for survival at this point.
I'm constantly trying to not become overwhelmed by stress and anxiety and burnout and everything else that every one of us is destined for these days. So
right.
I saw in your background we actually kind of have some similarities from a marketing type background. Does that weave into our book Genesis story at all? Were you in any of these things burned out or stressed out? Or
it was the genesis for the book was I wasn't interested in the health world at all until I'd say college. I'd say high school to college, I was really deep into sort of the mind, psychology, studying different philosophies, things like that, but not more the body and nutrition, biohacking, or any of that kind of stuff. So, what happened was by the time I graduated college, it became very clear when I'd look at other people that I wasn't, and how I just feel a lot of fatigue, brain fog, negative thinking, anxiety, and I could just tell this wasn't sustainable.
Sure.
And when I graduated, I made this commitment. I felt like my back was against the wall and I needed to figure it out. So I, went to doctors, Western doctors, their approach, Eastern doctors, their approach, changed my diet. I just attacked it with everything, and nothing was really making a dent until sauna. and I didn't know why. And so I started saunaing more. I started going down that rabbit hole. And then sort of this theory built that made a ton of sense to me and other people in this niche community around why it's so helpful. And that was really the genesis for the book. So at the same time as really going, the priority was that information, but I was also obsessed with everything else because I was just throwing stuff at the wall to figure it out for myself.
So a couple things to unpack in that. One, had somebody tipped you in the sauna direction, or was it just one of many, like in a list of shit to try?
It was one in a list. I just, the grace of God, I just kind of came across it with someone saying, "Oh, try a sauna." I think since I was like 14, I was always finding people who I felt like were ahead of me. So like at the start, that was Tony Robbins. I'll go like deep into the Tony Robbins rabbit hole. And then with health things, it was, all right, I don't feel well. Who are people who just look really vibrant, who are really healthy? And I found role models sort of in the natural health space, people like Shane Tyler Milson, Shervin of Jafaria of Symbiotica, this guy Sage, just these people I'd find sort of through online research who I'd say, if I do what they do, I think I'll be better. So I'd kind of model and test different things. And a common thread was sauna. And I think that played, I'm not sure exactly what maybe take my first step in. But once I did, I didn't really know why it was helping so much. And then so there was no placebo. It's just like, oh, this.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious. And so like the next part of that would be like, when we're talking about sauna, are you wet sauna, dry sauna, like infrared sauna? Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah. So it kind of breaks into three categories, steam, dry, and infrared.
Okay.
I advise against steam room personally. So mold grows in dark, damp places. That's what a steam room is. Plus you're breathing in water vapor, which if you look at like your tap water supply is not great. Typically it's contaminated and you're just direct inhaling that. So there's those pieces, plus you're blocking your ability to sweat to some degree. Dry and infrared are both fantastic. Infrared seems to have more proof of detoxification. But they're both like, if you can only dry, that's totally fine.
I'm not going to lie. I love my infrared sauna, but I also dig my wet sauna. I have a steam room in my master, and I'm laughing in my head because as you're going down the list of stuff that are not great, all of those things, like I nerded out about while I was building it.
Okay.
So like we have like no surfaces that haven't been microband or sealed or anything. Like there's literally nowhere for mold to grow.
Okay.
The tap water's double purified at the house and at the sauna. Like I'm just like, all right, check. Yeah. No, I mean, I went down a lot of those same rabbit holes as has Tom. And I'm like, well, and this was before infrared sauna was a thing. So we're talking maybe 8-9 years ago. And like the rage was steam showers, because you can put them in your house reasonably easily, right? Like if you were doing a construction project, it was within reason.
Yeah.
They were a little spendy, but like not crazy. My steam generator for a big one, I think maybe it was like $2,000. It wasn't like free, but it wasn't also like some crazy, crazy investment. I think my infrared sauna, what are those JLH ones that we have, Tom? Like, I mean, it's probably
they're not
bucks.
even like a 2-person one is about $1,000 now.
Oh no! Not when I bought them. It was like $3,500. I think I paid for mine when I bought it.
Yeah, and they're supposed to shield them with EMF, but it's also it's pretty interesting. Like, because Justin, it sounds like were you having some mold exposure issues? Because it was that part of the underlying issue there.
I may have been. I didn't get tested for it.
Okay.
There are studies showing sauna's benefits for mold. And interestingly enough, if you sauna, there's one study showing that it actually increases the amount of mold that comes out in the urine.
Wow, that's interesting, huh?
Yeah, it's like the body, I don't know, maybe it allows more detox pathways to open up and it comes out. So they have one study on that. There's an interesting like hour-long lecture on that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So for me, I think it was a combination. If you look at it kind of like from a terrain theory perspective, I think I just had a terrible diet. That kind of made me sluggish, and that kind of rich get richer, poorer get poorer thing. It just kind of went down, and it just kind of hit a wall. And so it became this, instead of this downward thing, sauna was what started this sort of like upwards cycle of health. Once I got that foundational piece.
That's very cool to hear. So where were you doing this? Like, were you like, do you have a health membership? You're going to spas at this point? Like, how'd you get into it?
At that time, I was. I think the first place I went to was Higher Dose in New York. I actually interviewed the founders for the book. And when I
watched their Dave Asprey interview.
Okay, cool.
He treated them very differently than he did most other guests.
In a positive or negative way?
In a you are two very attractive females kind of way.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's great. Yeah, tell me all about it. I love it.
Right.
Yeah. It was very every word you say is I love. There's very gentle interview style there.
Got it. Funny. Yeah, so they've been great and helpful during this process. So I think I started there, and then when I moved to the city, for work, I found, depending on my neighborhood, because I've moved around a little bit, the place where I can get a monthly membership. In New York, it's ridiculous. Or if I had a gym, I never did the gym approach actually with a sauna in the gym. I know Equinox has.
Ridiculous meaning it's an expensive proposition, or meaning there's a million of them, so you got choices. Yeah.
The former, actually. So there actually isn't there, and it's grown. There's more now, but it used to be I lived in Gramercy one summer, and the nearest location was about a half an hour walk to the Lower East Side. Where it was a colonic place where in the basement they had a single infrared sauna and no shower. So I'd walk in the summer, go do it, towel off as best as I humanly could, then walk another half hour back to shower at home.
You're getting your steps in for the day on top of it, so it's kind of
it's kind of funny though. One of the issues that they say with the sauna, and we don't have a shower at our place either. We have disposable, giant, essentially adult body wet wipes. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that one of the things they say is getting that sweat off of you, because trace amounts of cadmium, these kind of things are coming out of you. You don't want it sitting on your skin afterwards.
Right. And so, that could bring to the next point if you'd like, which is kind of the crux of the thesis of the book. I don't know if either of you had a chance to kind of go through it, but the crux of the thesis for the book is essentially massive underestimation of toxins as a root cause of health. And then I go really deep into that. I was really a journalist for this. I interviewed experts and kind of synthesized their ideas and brought them forth. So first half is that issue, the toxin, and then all the research showing the last 20 years that a lot of these things are preferentially excreted through sweat. And so essentially, here's this problem you're underestimating, and here's a solution you didn't know exist. It's kind of the crux of the book.
I would ask, is that true? Did they not know it existed, or did they also underestimate it? Sauna's been around forever, but did they just not?
Well, sauna, what's interesting, so the first chapter is the history of sauna. So I went through kind of all these cultures around the world that have used it. And it's really remarkable. It's hundreds of years of humans in different cultures using it. Russian banya, Native American sweat lodges, Peruvians using it, the Africans, just pretty much everywhere had some ritual around sweat and sauna. But back then, maybe they dealt with some heavy metals. It was more around, obviously you feel good from it, but it was more around, rite of passage rituals or trauma healing or things like that, or bonding within a group.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's funny, maybe related to this, but probably not, because I don't think you can sweat out microplastics, can you? That's a little heavy, right?
I was just reading some health Twitter. It's kind of this culture.
Was that today by chance? Because I read the same shit today.
I think it was.
It's making me think about it. They've found this huge corollary between microplastics in your blood vessels and just an overall decline in cardiovascular health. And I literally, I just read it today in passing. I think I've got about 900 Chrome tabs open. I'm sure one of them is still that article.
I saw the exact same article. And so I have a document, which is, I call open loops about health, things I'm not sure of. And one of them is there any toxins that sweat can't push out? We've got 60,000 known toxic chemicals that have been introduced in the last 60 years. And we've got a lot of research showing heavy metals come out, PFAs come out, PCBs come out. And then we could talk about the NICE and sauna protocol and how that sort of exacerbates this. But what I haven't seen is clarity around if there's a class of chemicals or toxins that can't come out of the body. And so the microplastic, nanoplastic issue, I haven't seen clear research on.
Right. Well, the thing with that is I'm wondering if the molecular size of it exceeds what could actually be excreted from your. I mean, I'm not.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. That was where that's the root of my questioning is like, is this thing too fucking big to actually be pushed out? Like,
it's interesting though, because if we're causing vasodilation and it's caught in the capillaries, that's going to put it back into circulation a little bit more. Hopefully if the blood vessel can expand far enough. And in my head, it would only make sense that it would end up going, a hepatic pathway, go through the liver rather than the kidneys, because you're not really going to be able to hydrolyze that, right? It's not going to bond to water and be able to excrete out that way. But
so where's it go in your mind? Where's it going?
Are you saying? Ahead. So again, not a doctor, and so I'm kind of just being a journalist as I've gone through this. But are you saying that it's not aquaphilic, so it would be lipophilic?
Yeah.
It's definitely not aquaphilic.
It's more likely to end up going out through like the bile duct, right? And I don't even know if that's right. I can't say. It's such a weird. This is a synthetic compound. You could say, is it going to be lipophilic or hydrophilic? I
don't think it's going to be either of those, because it's literally plastic. So you're not.
Once it's in the bloodstream, where like.
And here's the other question: is because it's plastic, can you even bind it like you can with a
like a heavy
chelation
metal
or anything
therapy,
like you can't really
or charcoal or anything.
Yeah.
Well, charcoal you might be able to, but you'd still need to chelate the charcoal.
That's going to be more in the gut too.
Yeah, that'll be more.
That's going to go systemic,
digestive tract. Which I think, if you're following Tom's logic, I don't know if it makes it over there. Like if it's going to get filtered out.
What about like an EBU with like the blood filtration?
See, but that's so my question is, I mean, there's a bunch of questions around this, and actually, I know you're not a nanoplastics person per se, but this is a theme Tom and I talk about on the show all the time, right? Like this stuff is studied in a vacuum and discussed in a silo, but it's not really a silo thing, right? Like nanoplastics clearly contribute to other toxins in the body and health concerns by extension. You know what I mean? So like we can't really, we could academically discuss them in isolation, but like really we need to talk about it in total. Like we are not going to stop accumulating these toxins anytime in the near future because we're alive in 2024. I mean, there's only so much you can do.
Sure. Well, I mean, I made like a third grade little equation in the book, which was like the toxin vitality equation, which is like on the top half was like increase, detoxification and then decrease exposure. So it's kind of those two pieces. The book is mainly concerned with sweat and the, getting this stuff out.
The detoxification,
There's a whole other class of things is like, how do you avoid this? But like you said, it's pretty much, you're not going to avoid 100% of it. You might be able to get away from some of it, but we're just drowning in it. So
we're drowning in it. And then if you look at like, what was that? We interviewed someone who had this like whole home filter and it got rid of PFAs down at that level. But like, I looked these filters up after the show, they're like $14,000. I'm like, and I forget what it was, but there was a consumable cost on top of that for the filters media that you had to change fairly often. And I'm like, look, I got a whole home water filter here. It's the first thing I put in when I moved to this house. And I just literally cut the main water line, put a loop in it, and put like a filter in there, right? And with 2 ball cock valves, it takes 2 seconds to change. It's easy. But like that goes down to 0.5 micron filter. And like that thing, I usually end up getting a 1 micron filter because the difference in time between having to change a 0.5 micron filter and a micron filter is months. So you have to now go from like once every 6 months of changing it to like once every 2 months to change.
Do you know
like,
does your water pressure drop when
that's it? And I actually, because I did a construction project here, the Baltimore County Building Code made me put a pressure regulator on, and there's a bolt with like a lock nut on it, and you could actually change your water pressure. So I have a hose bib water pressure meter so I can tell what it is. And now I have a TDS meter that I used to use to tell me when the total dissolved solids were getting too high.
Too high, yeah.
I would know it was time to change. And it was like a $10 sensor on Amazon. And you take a glass of water, you dip it in there and swirl it around, and you're like, all right, we're still good. And it tells you how many like parts per million, I think, of what you have of solids dissolved in your water, essentially, is all it's doing. But like, that's like $10-12, right? Like, and I can, now I've got a $10,
know how clean your water is, yeah.
water pressure one that gives me the same idea. So like $25 is what I'm into this problem. And I can tell you when I have to change it. These things are nuts. You have to change like $200 filters every, like, I don't quote me on this, but it's like every other month, on top of spending $14,000 to get the fucking thing in your house in the first place. I'm like, this doesn't feel like an approachable solution.
I think
like it's just too much.
And I kind of want to ask Justin this because like I'm interested in this. There also seems to be something about your detoxification pathways, right? And we've talked about the motherfucker gene a couple of times on the show.
Right.
And it seems like certain people, given their genetic makeup, their epigenetics, have inhibited pathways. And Justin, did you ever look into any of that? Like, did you look at metabolic channels that were basically detoxification pathways and whether or not they were active or not?
Yeah,
I mean, that's something that's, go ahead.
I have 2 SNPs of that gene. It seems to be kind of widely accepted that affects your detoxification capacities. I don't understand the science of it, to be frank.
And doesn't like 80% of people have that same thing?
It's like 40% have at least heterozygous on one.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's pretty common, but for some reason, I'm heterozygous on both. I'm probably processing B vitamins at like a quarter of what they're supposed to be. Did you change your supplement routine while you were doing all this then?
I was testing a whole bunch of stuff. I was testing dietary approaches. I was testing supplements and things. And I have I feel great now and everything's helped. It was, for me, maybe related to the genetic component that probably played a part, is the sauna just like really brought me back to feeling like a 7-year-old again. Because
that's
like
great.
my body, for me, it felt like my body was saying, thank you, we can finally get this stuff out.
What's dosage for you for sauna?
About
daily?
No, about 4 to 5 times a week, maybe.
Okay.
So not daily, but that's close to daily. You're scraping.
I've got an infrared in my apartment.
I was going to ask that too. That's got to, at a certain point, a guy in your situation just got to put one in your living space, Yeah.
And, best investment I've ever made. I'm part of, during this research, was joining a 50,000 person sauna niacin Facebook group. And I became
okay.
Love it.
Yeah. And part of, everyone in that group got there because they had health challenges that everything they tried wasn't working. And so it's this kind of hive mind, and you get your loonies, you get your mix of people, but you also get a lot of like genuine people who are trying to figure things out and share what they've learned.
Yeah, we've never met any crazy people talking about this
this
stuff.
sounds like the rapamycin group, right? There's some really dialed in scientists, and then there's some people that are really going to fuck themselves
Oh man,
up.
I looked over my buddy's shoulder at a rapamycin Facebook group. That shit was like, it goes rapamycin, tinfoil, flat earthers. Like it was sort of like, you were like right there at the end. I mean, it was like,
you got the midway curve kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's some, just kind of like baby in the bathwater. But what in that group, I forget. Kind of tied in. I'm sure you guys have gone down rabbit holes, and you almost become, not conspiratorial, but definitely cynical around sort of regulation and like what you've been told and like all this stuff. With the sauna industry, it's unregulated. And so, in the same way there's like steam room issues, there's infrared sauna issues. You mentioned the EMF issue, toxins in the build. So using like glues, flame retardants, bamboo, and things like that in the build. And unfortunately, a lot of the claims by companies, unless they're like extremely well backed up, like haven't held up in that Facebook group. And so there's not a single portable sauna on the market that passes that SNP test of being low EMF and toxin free. And then a lot of the wooden infrared saunas, people would go in with an EMF meter or get a VOC report, and it wasn't what the company was saying. So there's really only like a handful on the market that like are 100% reliable, unfortunately.
I don't remember the exact numerical values, but I took my cornet into mine the day I got it and was like, like, am I everywhere? And it passed with flying colors in my book. I don't remember the numerical values, but I remember going, I paid extra for EMF shielding. This shit better fucking
be shielded.
At least rationally. Like, look, I go and Justin, I spent 15 years in New York City. Trust me, nobody is more jaded and cynical than I am about pretty much everything. And I'll tell you right now, I went into this with very low expectations. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah. I'm
going to buy this extra EMF protection because I have to, and I can't. Oh, look at that.
You're on the back.
I can't not buy it. You know what I mean? Like there's that part of you that's like, okay,
what brand?
JLH is hold on, I'm going to
they've been making them for a long time. You know, so even the one that is not EMF shielded, they claim is low EMF.
So it's interesting.
Saunas. Yeah.
It can be like, it seems to be for some companies, like it was maybe sauna specific. So some people would get them and they'd be fine. And then another person would go, what the hell?
And that was one of the things that I had heard.
And that may be manufacturing quality. I also think there's a lot of white labeling in this arena too.
Where in China. It's like it's like with two factories.
Well, I mean, so Tom and I also have gone down the red light rabbit hole, and a buddy of ours actually has a red light product that incorporates red light.
He came out the other side.
He came out of the other. But he
as
gave
a proponent
us,
or
oh no.
He developed a machine that's $250,000. Damn, we've been talking about Brian a lot. We got to have him on.
We should talk.
So he prototyped a red light unit at my office that had PEMF in it, and it had hydrogen gas in a nasal cannula, and he left the frame, and then he goes, look, I need the EMF loop, I need all that. And now he's got an entire machine that is a zero gravity, I guess it's lucite recliner with a full spectrum EMF wave signal going through it.
Turns you into a PEMF antenna.
It basically, And then it's got haptic speakers that vibrate at certain specific pulses and frequencies. It's got guided meditation. It's got the nasal cannula.
And hold on. Don't forget the guided meditations done by a guy that lives in a pyramid in Tibet. Like,
was it Tibet or what? Like, it was somewhere,
or Nepal or somewhere.
Nepal, he's a sound engineer.
Yeah.
And then like, what does it do? Like, it's all run by like an iPad, and then like he literally outfitted a whole like Airstream liner and put this unit in, and he took it over to the Minnesota Vikings.
Denver
and they
Broncos.
ordered like 10 of them.
Yeah. So it's a pretty cool chair, but he's like balls deep in red light. Like his business partner, I think, has read over 1,000 papers on red light.
They're both savants of a certain kind. There's like you got to watch where you go with him. If you go too far down a rabbit hole, you're not coming out.
And he got me all like hard on for red light years ago. And so, but he gave me a Chinese manufacturer. And so
which is the same manufacturer that makes Juve, by the way.
So basically I have
company.
2 Juve panels, the big 48-inch one by, 18 inches or whatever they are. But like 2 of those landed in my yard in Baltimore was $1,100 or $1,200. You buy them from Juve, they're $6,000 each.
Oh, they're only 6,000 now? Because when I bought them, it was 9,000.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know what they are now, but what I'm saying is like Tom and I are not allergic to like finding the Chinese guy making the same exact shit somebody else.
Well, it's literally funny. I have an exercise with oxygen therapy device, and they give you a CPAP mask, and it's a fancy CPAP mask, and they're like, this is $300. So I looked up the person that we bought the red light panels from, and I said, hey, on WhatsApp, I sent her a photo of the thing, and she goes, oh, I got a friend at the factory across the street. They make that kind of stuff. Let me ask. And I was like, why am I not just going to you all the time?
Well, my mother-in-law got diagnosed with COPD years ago. And so Medicare wanted to give her an oxygen generator. And it was like $5,000. And I was like, for a 2-liter or 3-liter.
That's not too far off.
So
from
here's
the going rate. Yeah,
I know, but here's the thing. I made one fucking inquiry on Alibaba. I had 20 fucking guys telling me that they could sell me a 10-liter oxygen generator for $300. $300, not 5,000. I mean, it was like bonkers. And I'm like sitting there going, why the fuck are we spending retail on anything? Like, clearly
it's funny where, like, and I think to maybe Justin's point, I don't want to put words in your mouth, man, but it's like, it's all coming from China, but you still have to be aware of which model and the procedural stuff. And then just like a car, maybe you bought the best model. It's supposed to do everything it said, and it's just a lemon.
Well, let me ask you something, Justin. In all your research, one of the reasons I didn't go full spectrum on the sauna was because of the therapy window, and I got into a little bit of a vortex
red and near
about the red
far
versus near and the far, and like like it's okay to, and I do this all the time. There's actually a lot of evidence out there that the red light panels are great. What is that? The 620, 660 and 820
660 and 8
yeah, so as long as you got panels with those nanometer outputs, right, that they said that range was actually really good for, I'm 47, and at 47 you start to lose like contrast in the shadows
and stuff too. Yeah.
And they said, red light's actually a great way of retarding that process and or
you're talking about vision.
Reinvigorating it, right? And so I'm like sitting there going, okay, so basically the takeaway here is that not every Chinese manufacturer's got like good stuff, but 660 nanometer light wave is the same light wave, no matter who makes it, as long as it's actually measuring at that. And we had it from another guy who actually did do all the measurements at this company, did that. But like J&H, like, like, is there any evidence to actually support that? Like certain, like, are we concerned about spectrum? I guess is the broader question when it comes to infrared.
Meaning, is there an issue with full spectrum?
Not issue, but I mean, I guess the argument that I was led to believe, and I guess ultimately made my purchase decision on, was that if I want a therapy window of 30 minutes on average in sauna, that the near and far infrared in my red light panel for 18 to 20 minutes would be fine. I could look at it with my eyes open and it would be fine, but I wouldn't want to sit in that for 40 minutes a day because it actually could cause blindness and a bunch of other
It's like a dosage question.
Yeah, it's like a dosing question, really, right? Like
dosage on the red light or the infrared? Because you're
on the red here. That's the problem. I mean, the far infrared is so far past that you're not even worried about the eye. But there's even in our clinic, people go, are you going to give me, the little, tanning booth things? And it's like, you're only going to be in there for 20 minutes. And here's some research that says that's actually beneficial at this dose, and yes, we know how far you're supposed to be from the panel. We know how long, but don't sit in there for hours.
Well, that's the thing, but you're going to sit in there for an hour.
Well, yeah, sauna, I love being in for like an hour. I if I got the time, I go in it.
Yeah. So are we concerned? Like, what are our dosing concerns from your research and for the book? Like, are there any dosing concerns with any of the saunas, but I guess in particular the IR?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the two, with all these health protocols, as I'm sure you guys have seen, kind of like the main question I think to ask, especially when they're kind of these atypical approaches, is what could be the like negative unintended consequences of this. Yeah. There's two buckets that I was focused on in the research, and based on that group's kind of like hive mind knowledge and talking to like sauna experts, was the toxin issue and the EMF issue. I didn't come across anything specific to issues with dosage for like the eyes and like where on the spectrum it is.
Gotcha.
But it's an interesting question. And every time I sit in there, I'm like, I really think I've covered all my bases with the questions of like what matters to make sure that this isn't like a long-term problem if I'm doing this 3 to 5 times a week. Because the last thing I'd want to do is suggest something that 20 years down the line, it's like, oh, you didn't realize this will cause, eye issues or something.
Well, this is one of the greatest things, though. We have these long-term cohort studies, right? So, I mean, surely you've seen the 40% reduction in all-cause mortality with regular use. Yeah, all these things are extremely beneficial. Now, the sauna I have at my clinic, they had all these little upgrades, right? They had the ionizer to keep the thing from being stinky. They had the photochromic,
which is just a color changing light bulb.
This is a color changing light bulb that doesn't. It's an RV bulb. You can't just buy it anywhere. So they charge you an arm and a leg, and I'm like, this oh, but you can do red light therapy in it. I'm like, this is not, if you touch your skin to it, maybe it's not strong enough,
Well, the other issue is, and I dealt with this like in this, I don't want to say nightmarish, but at the time it felt that way, like going to these places to figure it out, is I'd become aware of these things, and I'd go into a place and they'd have just a completely synthetic fragrance like plugged in the sauna.
Yeah.
And so you're hotboxing that fragrance in the sauna.
Yeah, like a Glade plug-in or something. Yeah.
And you're like, no, right. Hard pass.
It's so funny that there's that disconnect there, right? I mean, even
with
with
us, for sure. Yeah.
Well,
we have essential oils, but we don't put them in the machine. Why? Because maybe the next person doesn't want to smell that.
Right.
Well, smell it or chemical, or if it's real natural essential oils, it's one thing. But if it's these,
even that, right? We know there's so many scams. You buy one brand and they're saying, oh, that other brand isn't good, and then look, that other brand will tell you, look at these guys. Here's a study that they're using synthetics.
And I'm the asshole who's like, look, I got to buy like more lavender for my aroma diffuser. And I'm like, I need medical grade. that's the thing. Like, as long as you're getting something that's pure, I mean, to Justin's point, you're not worried about the toxicity. No, I know. But that medical grade lavender is like 5x the cost of Amazon grade.
If you go on Amazon and you look at whatever the cheapest brand is versus, and it's something as simple and as readily available as lavender, and that could be the same bottle could be, one could be $4 and one could be $50.
Right. And you know what, Justin, is really terrible in the world, and this is, I think, probably something with sauna you see more than anything, or not more, but at least as much, is that like things that sound like they should be healthy, people don't ask the next question, right? Like lavender is a great idea. Great question, right? There's a wild difference between medical grade aroma oil lavender and like, Royal Farms gas station, essential
their
oil.
Blueberry coffee is good. I know it's not real blueberry.
Like the water you're drinking.
Right.
Exactly.
And so people are like, oh, well, I'm like, and actually when I was getting into my steam shower research, one of the things they said is don't use shitty aroma oil in the top of it, because there's a well on the top that you can put, like I put eucalyptus oil in there when I'm doing it.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Oh, it's awesome. Like, and it's like, and what's funny? Unintended consequences in the good way. I never even thought about this, but I had kids that were getting older right after I had put that in. And I remember the bathroom was done. I was into it. I was doing like 6 a week at one point. I was just like, I love this fucking thing. But then my kids got like bronchitis and like just had the worst fucking cough and everything. And I'm like, oh shit, I've got like the perfect cure for this. Like we're gonna like get this thing nice and crazy. And my kids actually, it ended up becoming like a fun part about being sick, right? Like it wasn't just, but I'd load that reservoir up with like a 1/4 teaspoon of eucalyptus oil. And it was like a Vicks Vapo bomb when you walked into this thing. It was just like, I was getting decongested from like the next room, right? Like I really like, and I'm like, I love it. But they said, you were talking about the water vapor. Now imagine you have shitty water and shitty aroma oil and you're just hotboxing this, cauldron of shit.
Well, exactly. And I think my main complaint nowadays is I have like the sauna I use at home, but let's say I go visit family somewhere, or, when I go to Florida, there's a building my family's in, and there's a sauna, and people will go in their shoes, with a plastic water bottle, in their clothes that's made of polyester. And, you can debate how much is off-gassing, but especially in a dry sauna where it's 200 degrees,
200
degrees, it's getting off-gassed in a contained environment that you're just breathing it in. So there's so many examples, I think, of just unintended negative consequences if you don't do the full 360-degree look at something to start implementing.
Well, and then people give you the comment. They're like, "Oh my God, I can't think about everything. I'm just going to do this anyway." I'm like, "All right, well,
go for it."
That's an option.
But is that like, in that degree, is that better than nothing? I mean, that's a weird question too. And how do you quantify that for every individual person?
Sure.
Well, like, not everybody's going to be a marathon runner, but if they get up and walk around the block a few times, is that better than them sitting? Yes. But in this case, them doing something with the intention of being helpful could definitely have some detrimental effects, especially if they're walking in with plastic bottles and
Well, I think
God knows what kind of cologne on them, and
yeah, I think it's a case by case thing. So like, if you're going to buy an infrared sauna for your home and you don't know, and you buy a high EMF, essentially cancer box, like you're daily doing that to yourself. And it's
that's why I said, even if it's bullshit, I got to at least buy the more expensive ultra low EMF,
the one that'll make you feel better about the cancer
you went a step further than most people when you tested it.
Yeah.
So you're good.
I did.
Well, EMF detectors are what, $20?
This is like
they're not super expensive.
Bucks. Yeah, this wasn't it. But here's the funny thing too: it's a tri-field EMF meter, so you've got each side of the 3 sides of the box actually test for different things.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's super fucking directional and super fucking sensitive, right? Like, so you have to, in some cases, like the Wi-Fi. Probably the biggest lesson I learned from this thing is if you have a MacBook Pro, the Wi-Fi antenna is on the front of the monitor. So if you can,
facing you.
It's facing you. It's literally blasting your face with EMF. So if you could, and I've now as I'm looking at it, I forgot to turn it off. I have my Wi-Fi on right now, so I'm getting baked. But if you turn it off and you hardwire an Ethernet connection, it's like 1/16 of the EMF radio, and it's instant drop. Like it's like just. And so I say to people, yeah.
I was going to ask how deep down my understanding of EMF has come from that group and reading Dr. McCullough's book on it.
He's got some good stuff in it. The guy I followed, what was his name? It was an older guy with a big long gray beard, real conspiracy theory, like Vietnam kind of guy.
Sure.
Yeah. It's like, I can't explain him any better than that. He's like this guy lives in the mountains in California. Like he just, like he's, you don't know. Is he like super knowledgeable or just a little too conspiracy?
Yeah. That's the thing. There's like a very thin line between, hey, that totally makes sense, and no, he's got this real.
Like really expensive, like big hardcore EMF meter, and you heard this little like very, 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 very quiet, and he goes, "Oh, I forgot. There's a cell tower 6.5 miles from here. That's definitely that." So like this guy was dialed in, like, Neo and the Matrix kind of thing about like
That's
what
so
these
crazy,
like
man.
noises. And like, I don't know, like the problem is I ran around my house like a lunatic with this thing for a week, trying to like measure everything from my refrirator to my TVs.
Yeah, but what are you going to do? I mean, are you like,
there's the other
you
side.
got a Faraday cage, everything?
Yeah. Well, now I know why now I know that my old TV was like cooking us like a tanning booth, but like I didn't take the TV off the wall. Like I didn't Faraday in my living room, so like, I mean, at a certain point having this knowledge and I had this whole debate with people about like closing the gaps on the rings on your iPhone or your Apple Watch or getting 10,000 steps in and stuff. They're all logged in these like self-quant app universe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't know a single person that's ever reviewed that shit outside of a philosophical conversation with nerds like this on this call. You know what I mean? Like it's not,
it's so hard to do because like that also,
I mean, Tom is a big Muse headband guy. And
God, yeah.
And I use Muse, but I don't use the headband because mine broke. But I use it still to log.
Look, man, I'm working an angle. Who knows?
I know.
Should we call the person out? I won't.
Yeah. But like, there's a note thing on there. You can meditate for the day and say like, here's how I felt. And you could rate it with a happy face and put a note.
I'm not that.
I did that for 2-3 years. And then I was like,
never take notes.
I'm never going to fucking look back at this. And if I did, what am I going to say? Like I got 80 birds and like I just got laid last night.
But like, I also feel like there's a certain, like the meditation I do is Taoist based. You're not supposed to be looking for something. Just kind of sit there and see what happens. Right.
But that's my point. Like, we're going to look back and quantify all this crap. Like, probably not. Like,
I mean, really, I hate to say it. Like, I love the program and sometimes I'll play with some of the other, lately, all I've been doing is doing no music and just the birds.
Oh man, I don't. Yeah.
And for what it's worth, I'll play with some of the other guided meditations and things like that. But I'm like, is that better than what I was doing? Is that worse than what I was doing? I don't know.
Well, Justin, that's what I do now to get my sauna in. I'll put my meditation in there. right? Like, so I'll do my 20-minute of meditation and I'll
Yeah.
get 20 out of 30 minutes of sauna done. And I feel like it's like a busy guy like me, kids and school and soccer practice and work and everything else. Like, I just don't have time to. So I'm like a health hack stacker. Like, I will stack as many things on top of each other as I possibly can.
I tried doing the Muse headband, but like I think I ruined the headband.
Yeah,
you know, like in the heat, in the sauna.
So you're an IR guy
like
right now.
Off casting.
Justin, you seem like an infrared guy for the most part. Is that a fair read? Like, is that where you kind of like it for yourself?
I think I prefer it, and I have no problem being somewhere and using a dry sauna. And if I ever stumbled across a perfectly constructed one like yours, I might try a steam again. But
yeah, I mean, you have to really pay attention. Yeah, I mean, you do have to. Well,
but I mean, just even the volume of people going through a hotel one, that's kind of
right.
And also, something about the public one is a little, even just the gross factor.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if it's in your house and you know the cleaning regimen and everything.
I mean, are you a germaphobe, Justin, at all? Are you a tidy kind of guy?
No, I'm not a germaphobe.
No, okay. Because I can definitely see germaphobe and sauna enthusiasm being at odds with one another.
I mean, even just the concept of having that much sweat around you, even if it's yours, might freak people out.
Well,
you know?
I mean, it wasn't something. It's kind of that you do something you realize is good, and then you associate positive things with it.
Yeah,
I didn't enjoy sweating, but now I associate getting the stuff out. I'm going to feel great in an hour.
Yeah. And what's your therapy window look like generally? Do you have different dosing for different needs, or you kind of stick to a standard and like?
I go with what I feel, kind of like going typically it's not pre-planned. So I go in.
Yeah.
Usually now it's been like 25 to 45 minutes is kind of what I go for. I aim for like a minimum of 20 minutes of heavy sweating.
Mm-hmm.
Again, research is one thing, but Dr. Joe Pizzorno says that that's like a good target in terms of like getting enough out per session.
Wow. So one of the things, can I ask you this, Justin? Because I found that because it's infrared and it is at a lower temperature, it normally takes a little while to get your core warm so you actually do sweat.
That's my problem.
So are you counting the 20 minutes from when you step in or when you start sweating?
From when I start sweating.
There we go. Okay.
And it varies. Sometimes I'm in there like 2 minutes and it kicks on at the same temp. Sometimes it's like 15 minutes. I'm like, why is it taking so long?
This is why I always fire it up before we get in.
Yeah, I have to fire it up like before I take my kids to school or something and give it 20 minutes to get stupid hot in there. And then I got to get in because otherwise you'll burn through a 20-minute session. It's fucking still room temperature in there. It feels like, you're like,
there's that. And I think what I'm trying to say is I don't start sweating at the same spot even when it's fully heated. It might take me 5 minutes or 15 minutes.
Here's an interesting question we've noticed with patients, and I want to get your thoughts on this. So we found that some people, when they're further away from health, when they need more detoxification, it's almost like those first couple of sessions, they're in there for 50 minutes. They may not even start sweating, right?
Yeah.
And then as they start moving towards health, right, and as those pores, and I don't know the method of action here, but they'll start sweating quicker, right? We make sure the sauna is preheated for them. But, they'll go like, look, I was in there 50 minutes and nothing. And then when they start actually sweating, it may be that their detoxification pathways are so closed that their body doesn't even know, like, I'm grossly oversimplifying this. Their body doesn't even know how to regulate themselves.
Right.
Yeah, like they're so
Well,
toxic.
anything come across your radar on that? That's an interesting question. I'm curious.
In all like the research and everything, the anecdotal like evidence seems to agree with that, which is that a lot of people were like, I'm really unhealthy. I've been saunaing for the last week and I haven't been able to sweat. What's going on? It seems to be that. And it's very rare to kind of hear like, I'm in great shape. I feel good. And I started saunaing and I can't sweat. I don't hear that as often. A couple other, it's called hyperhidrosis if you like an excessive sweater. Hypohidrosis if you can't sweat. And weirdly enough, in the writing of this book, I came across a lot of people. I would do these. It's a site called FocusMate where you just pair with someone to do a work session, and I would do that when I was writing the book. I say, so
it's kind of like the cave.
That's cool.
Yeah, so you hop on, and I'd say, hey, I'm working on chapter 2 of my book, and at the end of the session, you'd say how'd it go, and oftentimes I'd ask what I was working on, and a shocking amount of the time, someone would say, I can't stop sweating. I don't know why I have this issue, or I have a really hard time sweating. So it's this weirdly large, untalked about thing, and not really clear research on either of them. The hyperhidrosis potentially is like an overactive, in the same way you have like public speaking and you get nervous because your fight or flight's kind of activated. It's like potentially meditation or things like that could help with hyperhidrosis.
Oh, so we're thinking more of like a sympathetic nervous system overload or hyperfunction.
That's one of the theories, and the other one is like maybe you're extremely toxic and your body's like has a way to get it out.
Trying to dump stuff out. Yeah.
Which, you know, I don't know.
Both sound plausible.
Right. And so I know we don't have infinite time left, but what's the like? I heard about this niacin. You've said it a couple times, and there's all kinds of really groovy stuff out there with niacin, and I'm just curious, like what does that look like? I mean, that seems to me to be sort of like sauna upgraded.
To me, I mean, yeah, it sounds like you guys are clearly like very deep and into.
I'll get you some injectable niacin if you want.
So I've got some on my desk right here, actually.
He's like, I've already got it. It's all sitting right here.
But I think like the thesis that I keep saying thesis because it's like putting out this like if this is true.
But I mean that's what it is,
that's
right?
What it is.
You're working an angle, and you got a good argument for it. You're defending that. Yeah.
So the thesis is that the niacin sauna protocol is the most powerful detoxification protocol and therefore health protocol people should do, and every human on the planet should be doing it if you buy into these ideas. It's kind of like where you're left with, I think, with these ideas. And so the niacin sauna protocol, weirdly enough, the guy who figured this out, I don't talk about him in the book, L. Ron Hubbard of Scientology. Figured out that niacin and
I'm
sauna.
Sorry that one got me for some reason.
It got me too. He figured out that actually allows detox of the fat cells. And so drug residue. So he'd use it for drug rehab. So people, the argument essentially still exists, is that the drug stays in the body. This protocol gets it out, and that reduces like the same substance craving itself kind of thing. This is kind of the theory behind it.
And honestly, I went down this rabbit hole years ago about an unrelated thing, and it's popped up several times, but I never really kind of dove in. So I think part of my question was kind of like, what is it about sauna in particular that seems to trigger a better use with niacin versus not?
What dosage are we getting a niacin flush with this? Is that the intention?
So that was originally what people thought, is that the flush. So it's called lipolysis, rebound lipolysis. So what niacin does, what's the miraculous component of it, is rebound lipolysis, which essentially like ruptures the fat cells or opens the fat cells and allows the toxins to dump into the bloodstream, which then you time that with the sauna and you get it out. And so they say, and they originally thought
half an hour before or something.
The current research shows it's actually 3 hours before. So you take it
3 hours. Okay.
2.5 hours later, you start exercising. It could be a long walk or some jogging just to get the system going. And then time that. And then 30 minutes later, you get in the sauna. And so that's
doing it.
Yeah. So, Tom's like, I'm doing this tonight.
Well, let me break it down a little bit. You can do the start of it alone, but really there's other factors. So you're dumping like a year's worth of stored toxins in the system. You're getting a lot of it out in the sauna, but you're also taking binders and things to, kind of capture and bring the rest out. So you're not getting a Herxheimer or anything like that. But
how often are you doing this?
You can eliminate Herxheimer is what you're saying. You can mediate it.
You can mediate it with charcoal or bentonite clay or things that grab onto the thing, so it's not creating that reaction. And you do that on the protocol. So let me back up a little bit. So he figured out.
Is this in your book, by the way?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I'm buying it right now. I'm sorry, I got to do it right. I'm doing it. I'm going right to Amazon.
So the arc of the book, it's not I didn't want any fluff, so it's really just a 130 page book.
Oh man, you're
that's
like
great.
Tom's
Mine's
book.
only $130, so you're good in my book.
$130.
Tom's book,
130 pages. Sorry,
Tom's is almost the same
pricing.
exact. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Tom's over here. It's almost the exact same.
So I'm talking about sweat history. Then I'm going into the toxin issue. Then I'm going into sweat and detox research. Then the types of saunas. And then I finish with the niacin sauna protocol. What I talk about for context is specifically 9/11. So during 9/11, you had thousands of people exposed to enormous quantities of toxins, breathing it in. Whether they're survivors or firefighters, and in the aftermath of that, debilitating health symptoms. Brain fog, tremors, couldn't work, fatigue.
I knew two
symptoms.
men who died of breast cancer that were first responders in 9/11.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So
and apparently there's a whole cohort of men who got breast cancer, and the doctors were like, "What the fuck is wrong? How is this happening?" And they were like, they very rapidly traced it back. They're like, "Oh, you were all you were all first responders."
So this happened, like you said, so people obviously dying and things like that. A lot of people, by the way, some people just had no symptoms and it got worse as the years progressed. But a lot were hit pretty immediately with problems, lung issues, pulmonary issues. And so all went to different types of treatment, pills, inhalers, traditional kind of approaches, and nothing was really helping people. Someone I spoke to's father got funding to create this 9/11 rescue project, detoxification project, where they did this niacin sauna protocol with an initial cohort of 500 people. So they had that whole range of symptoms. Those 500 people went through this 30-day protocol. 87% of them got off their medications. Almost all of them were able to go back to work. They had a demonstrable IQ improvement from before and after. Their postural sway test went up. Their balance went up. So in short, it got to the root cause and healed it. And when you saw pictures of this, some of them had towels with blue on it from the manganese that they were sweating out.
That's the weirdest thing because, we also have exercise with oxygen therapy at our office. Mm-hmm. And when I was talking to the company and I was talking about the protocols we were trying to enact and do all these things, they're like, don't be surprised if people sweat blue or green or yellow. And I'm like, fuck you. And no, there's actually reasons why they would.
Yep.
So it's leaching out toxins that efficiently that
not everyone had that. You had a few cases.
No, of course.
And you also have to have like almost like a critical mass of that toxin, right?
But those things
have
don't
to have enough to actually express. Well, it's funny because I was on a podcast the other day with the doctor, and she kind of like gently corrected me because I'm like, look, that green smoothie is not going to do anything by itself, but in a system where you're optimizing, and that's exactly what it sounds like this niacin sauna protocol is, when you're optimizing those detoxification pathways, the ability for your body to get things out is going to improve exponentially.
I mean,
right?
that makes total sense that it gets better at it. I mean, if I did bicep curls, I would expect that eventually my biceps would get stronger. I feel like this is a version of that story. I mean, I don't know if that's a naive way of thinking about it, but
it's not, but it's like doing bicep curls and also supplementing every pathway to add muscle mass.
Well, I think the way I think about it is the main issue is a lot of these chemicals are lipophilic, so they store in the fat, and then the only way that they're getting into the bloodstream is through exercise, where it's burning, and then that's why some people, there's an argument that's why like when you exercise heavily, you like get delirious sometimes or things like that, is because you've dumped a lot of these substances into the bloodstream, which is interesting.
It's also like people that have rapid fat loss and they start tripping after they've done psychedelics for a long time.
Right. And there's interesting arguments around fat loss as well with this toxin issue. But the idea being, it's lipophilic, so they store. And then niacin is dumping what the body's been holding on to that's been quietly dripping, kind of poison dripping, if you want to call it that, into the system and causing all these problems. And so the point is, the main point is it's this extreme example that proves that it's getting to the root cause, which is these toxins and chemicals. And 9/11 is not the only example. Gulf War victims.
So do you do this yearly or quarterly, or like what's this protocol supposed to be done?
The protocol argues that you get about a third of your stored toxins detoxed out of your system in a 30-day protocol. And so, ideally you should get through it at least 3 times, but then I don't see any problem with doing it like once a year.
After you've done that initial 3.
After you've done that initial batch, yeah. And
is there a waiting time? Could I just do 3 months straight if I wanted to just go balls to the wall, or like?
I think you should have some waiting time in between. It's a little, it's mostly not for like the argument is there's a couple things. One is even when you're done with the protocol, your body could still be dumping it into the system, even when you're done taking niacin. So with the niacin, this is 100 milligrams. On the protocol, you start with 100, and then you titrate. You go up 100 milligrams a day in order to keep the lipolysis
for 30
going.
days.
For 30 days. So you get up to 3,000 milligrams of niacin.
So you get 3 grams of niacin in your system at the end? Jesus.
Yes.
Well, look, a lot of weird protocols with vitamin C, right, go up to 5 grams of vitamin C. So it's not really, and B is a water soluble, so we're not worried so much about, like, you're not going to get toxicity from that. And it makes sense that, like, I mean, the whole concept is your body can't handle the toxin. It's like a defense mechanism to lock it into your fat, right? So this is actually, it's savvy, but at the same time, depending on somebody's level of toxicity, and this is why it's important to titrate this, right? You don't want to jump to like 3 grams of niacin day one and flush your body. You will, like, I don't care how much charcoal you take, you're gonna herx. You're gonna get a really bad response. Yeah,
there's that component, but there's also the lipolysis being induced. It needs that titrating. Like if you kept taking, if you took 500 milligrams 10 days in a row, you wouldn't necessarily induce lipolysis each time.
The same way. Yeah, I gotcha.
So,
interesting.
That's the idea. And then, like as part of it, it's niacin, exercise, sauna, but then there's also, replenishment. So a pretty comprehensive vitamin, like mineral based
protocol.
Along with binders.
And the binders are what?
I'm just
the
Zamboni Ecologics and just start ordering stuff now, because now you got me inspired.
So are the binders just like the Zamboni at the end to kind of like do some sweep up after?
Well, I think so. So like Herxheimer's reactions, we see so many chronic illness people, so many like chronic Lyme, I would even say COVID in this time, and even though that is not a toxicity per se, that like you start feeling better, your immune system starts mounting a response and you feel like absolute shit. In this case, it's more toxic, heavy metals, plastics, these kind of things. But your body doesn't know what, like, imagine you took like every drug you've ever taken all of a sudden is now in your bloodstream, anything that wasn't processed properly.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'd like to do it. I mean, I've done all kinds of wacky health stuff, but I've never done a niacin
Justin,
flush.
what we're asking you is like, give us a month or two.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, fuck, I got to do this now. Jesus.
I lay out exactly how to do it in the book. However, I do recommend using a coach for it. And so we can link to a Facebook group where there's someone who teaches that specifically.
Oh, that sounds great.
Because there is subtlety to it in the same way you don't want to mess up buying the wrong infrared sauna. You don't want to mess up this, like you just said, there's things that can go wrong. If done safely, nothing to worry about. But I just want to make
what's funny? I'm far less
protocol. Yeah.
Sure. I'm going to sound like a doo-doo face for saying this, but like I don't care about the bad health effects as much as I care about being inefficient. Like
unless
if I'm going to go do something,
experience.
Like I've had plenty of bad experiences, but you know what? Like
this isn't like a bad trip. It doesn't.
No. I guess what I'm saying is like if I'm going to spend my time doing something, especially as an experiment, like I want to be as ninja-like efficient as I can. Because then if I have a bad experience that I know I did the absolute best version of that thing and like it doesn't get, you know what I mean? Like I started at the top and worked down. Like there's nothing more disappointing than spending time and money and everything and being like, oh, all I had to do was this one extra thing and it would have worked twice as good.
Right.
Exactly.
So like they, all these little subtleties of, oh, you shouldn't go in 30 minutes after, you should go in 3 hours after. The research now shows that. So like those kinds of things. It's this kind of thing. It's wild, right? You guys are deep into the health space and you've maybe heard of it once or twice. And the argument is like, why haven't we heard of this? One, I think, is that reason I mentioned, which is L. Ron Hubbard figured this out. But like the counter,
everybody puts a safe distance between themselves.
No one believes the aliens.
But taking niacin and getting in a sauna doesn't change your religion. Is kind of the counter to that.
Totally.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Of course. Yeah.
And then the other one is there's not a lot of money to be made in it. Niacin.
There's
niacin is dirt cheap.
Yeah, dirt cheap.
I'm sure people aren't happy about that. And it's not easy. You can't do it in a day, but it is this if you buy
Which
into
is
these ideas,
the Antichrist in a TikTok world, right? What? It
Right.
can't be done in 7 seconds.
I do imagine like a nice and flush challenge on TikTok going viral, but no one's.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a little worried about starting.
Don't make me do that.
Yeah. Was that a dare, Justin? I don't know. Yeah, like
you'd go viral. I think you would.
Oh my God.
It's just this. There's so many, like, if you believe, like, to me, it's just the most overlooked thing that I'm trying to understand why it's overlooked. And I have my reasons. And I think these are the reasons. It's not easy to kind of package up, but if you buy into it, like I spoke to someone who has a wearable sweat sensor for marathon runners. And as I'm speaking to them, I'm like, I can't imagine taking 1,000 or 100 marathon runners, putting them through this protocol, which detoxes all these toxins that are affecting their mitochondria and like their ability to produce energy properly, and them not beating the other cohort who doesn't go through this protocol. Like, I can't imagine that as an example, or IQ test before and after, because the brain's 60% fat. Like, I felt my brain clarity go through the roof, and so many people have through doing this.
That makes sense.
It's this wild, gets to the root.
And I love all that shit. And that makes me, I mean, we just talked about the Huberman daily regime here not too long ago on this. And like
Huberman, or are we talking about the
Brian
the
Johnson
guy?
we did first, but like Huberman. Yeah, and then we did, we looked at Huberman's too. And like what I love about these guys is like that coaching aspect that you said, right? Like Huberman's like whole thing about caffeine. I'm a big coffee drinker. I use it both recreationally and as an intentional afternoon nootropic. Yeah, like morning is definitely recreational, and then like in the afternoon, I notice a gigantic like if it's on a microdose day, I use LSD microdosing, and on a day where I do that, an afternoon coffee just meets that LSD like at the perfect place. Like,
God,
and all of a sudden,
microdosing, aren't you?
And all of a sudden, I have this immense nootropic boost. So like, although I used to definitely like the pick me up in the afternoon, I've realized that as I kind of modulate my health more responsibly, I don't necessarily need the caffeine boost, but like from an energy standpoint, but from a cognitive standpoint, it's a fucking rocket fuel, and I love it, right? Like, and it's just like perfect. But like Huberman's thing is, don't drink caffeine for the first 90 minutes you're awake, while your body naturally flushes adenosine out of your system, and then you can put caffeine in after, and then you're not, because what'll happen is caffeine basically halts
adenosine. Yeah,
it halts the adenosine flush process, and which would cause paradoxically brain fog and lethargy and all these other things. And so it loops back on itself. So what do you do to fix that? You drink more coffee, which further stunts the adenosine flush. And when you hear somebody just lay out the Legos of that equation, you're like, oh, that makes total fucking sense. Why didn't I think of that? Like, because it's not unintelligible, even from a Luddite like a Tom, like, maybe we're not Luddites.
Are my bricks making sense, I guess? Or
no, totally. And that's exactly what I like about talking. And that's really the reason Tom and I started this project, is like talking to people that just have, nerded
kind of
out on
this
one thing
before we recorded it, kind of thing.
Yeah, we might as well record it and not get paid for it, rather than just talk about it and not get paid for it.
Well, and speaking of that, we're about a $1:10 here.
Yeah, we're
long.
We should wrap it.
Otherwise,
I could talk about sauna all day.
What would you like to like? You be your parting words. Tell us where we can get the book, all that kind of stuff.
So the book's on Amazon, paperback, Kindle, hardcover, audiobooks uploading as we speak.
Nice. Love it.
Like I said, it's a short, to the point read, and it could be a guide.
Did you read it? Are you the audiobook guy, or did you hire a guy?
I read it, yeah, which was interesting. Cool. So I said I'm a musician, so I went to the studio I'll record at, and
that's fun.
Spent the day recording.
That's fantastic.
Which was interesting. I liked a lot of it. Obviously, you find things that you say it out loud that you might want to change for second edition, but I'm the narrator.
Cool.
Nice.
And check it out. And if people want to reach me, I guess we can leave my email and Twitter. I like to hear from people. So
sure.
Cool. Definitely.
Cool, man. Well, Justin, I really love this. I mean, it's was on our sort of bucket list to get a sauna person on here, because like it's something that we don't have I mean, even if you look at the biohack world, I mean, Rhonda Patrick has got like a little niche following around.
She's
sauna.
very, very into the heat cold kind of thing.
Yeah.
She's not getting this, like, she's fantastic. It's just this. The only reason I'm talking and doing this is because I just haven't heard people connect those two things, which is like she doesn't get into the toxin issue and the sauna sweat component.
And I think it's almost because she's in a different niche. Even like we're starting to see these sub niches kind of develop where like she's in human optimization and you're coming at it from a very like, how do we clean the shit out of our system first, right? I mean, you almost have to do that before you get to optimal.
I mean, she's talking about like what's the dosing and timing around increasing human growth hormone output after a workout. Is it like 30 minutes? Is it 20 minutes? And it's like, is it 140 degrees? Is it 130? I mean, she gets real nerdy, but it is all around.
I would love to have her on the show.
No, she's awesome. I love it, but it's very to Tom's point. It's very much about optimization. It's
it's
not
we have this whole population that clearly is walking around less than, they're not even thinking about optimization. They're just trying to survive. Right. So if you got to move people out of that like survival mentality before they can start talking about how good can you get,
Justin, you need to write a follow-up book called like Freeze or something and do a cold exposure, like bookend to this project. That might be the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's not, I mean, I love the idea. I mean, you know what? Actually, there's a whole workout day of Huberman's routine that is nothing but 20 minutes in an IR sauna, 3 minutes in a cold dip, 20 minutes in IR sauna, 3 minutes in a cold dip. And you do that 5 times.
Yeah. Where do these
But that's
people
the workout.
find
That's
this
the day's
time?
workout. That's it. Right. Like, and I was like, fuck, that's a lot of time getting freezing and hot. But like, I've never done it. But I have a cold pod in my basement that I haven't like had the balls to get into yet because I'm really like such a wuss when it comes to cold. You're
gonna make me do it.
My brain doesn't function in cold, but I'm like sitting there going, everybody I know I've read articles about, like love this protocol. Like they like literally it's like the second coming. They think it's like the exercise protocol sent from a mountaintop, right? And it's like philosophically, it makes sense, right? You get like all the detox pathways that we're talking about. And then all of a sudden you like freeze it all down, clamp it all down. You get that like blood pressure spike, you get the lowering of the glucose. And then what do? Right back, just start it again. Like it like makes sense procedurally, I guess, but it's just, I don't know. I'm still working my way up to it. I'm not quite there yet, but
I'm familiar with Huberman and the blueprint specifically, like I'm more familiar with, but I haven't really looked into this more like Huberman actual.
He's interesting, man. He's a neuroscientist, I think, right? Is that his? Yeah. He's a neuroscientist. He's,
you know what I like about him is he's been called out for having like some wrong comments on things, and he actually retracts his statements and goes, "You're right." So like one guy that I really like on Twitter and Instagram, his handle's BioLane. Right. And all he does is research. Right. And I also like him because he lists his PRs like he's a power lifter. But, he called out Huberman and Huberman was like, you know what, man, you're absolutely right. I'm sorry. I misled people.
You mean not like Joe Rogan and asked about
totally.
mycotoxins?
His coffee is special, but it's funny because it's different. And like Joe Rogan can be fun, but like, is that the person you want to be giving you medical advice? Right. Just because it worked for him doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And the method of action isn't always exactly what it's presented to be if it's there at all, All right, I'm not picking a fight with Joe Rogan.
I was going to say, take your COVID advice from Joe Rogan. I feel like I hear he's like a big guy.
If he ever sees me. So, although Justin, I look like one of his listeners.
You were awesome, man. If you ever do write a follow up to this or whatever, definitely look us up because I'd love to keep this conversation going.
Yeah, man, we might be tapping you in a couple months after we try the protocol out.
It's very likely I'll be niacining here soon. Yeah,
cool, man. I got it on the way. It'll be here tomorrow.
Yeah, nice.
Perfect. Very cool.
Justin, thank you so much, man. Enjoy.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Be subversive, irreverent. health is wealth, but you knew that.
Everybody knows that.
But so is following us on social media at Irreverent Health. And check out our website for more exclusive content at irreverenthealth.com.
Oh, I like this.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Irreverent Health.